Welcome back to Incremental, the continuous improvement podcast. This is our concepts edition for the week. I'm Devin Bedoni.
And I'm Uriel Eisen.
And you want to rock that quote?
Oh, yeah. This fellow Ono is doing something utterly ridiculous and must be stopped. A quote from the Toyota production system. I guess he was sort of recognizing his managers for their...
faith?
Something.
Yeah.
For not interfering while the experiments started.
Yeah. And developed. It was a fairly long period of time, right?
Yeah. Implementing Kanban took 10 years.
Yeah.
Which made me feel all right about where we're at.
And for those of you who haven't been following along or haven't read any of this stuff, this is happening at Toyota, obviously. And Ono was their... Was he their CEO? What was his position exactly?
I think at that
point?
stage he was head of their machining group.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought it was just funny and also interesting. Yeah, in terms of it's like doing this stuff is hard. Doing it is counterintuitive. It takes a lot of work to get anywhere.
Yeah.
And it is not crazy to feel like it's not worthwhile.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday who runs a small business, not in manufacturing, but in contracting. And he was kind of like, I need a little bit more work, like to utilize my people. And I was like, well, do you just need it to keep them busy, or do you need it like because you need it for cash flow? And he was like, well, just to keep them busy. And I was like, well,
do I have the thing for you?
That is the ideal place for improvements. Like if you're going to pay them anyway and you don't need the cash flow, like put it back into the business. And he was like, well, I've already invested more than I had planned to for this year. And I was kind of like, well, I mean, you're going to pay that money one way or another. So you might as well, like you could do it on busy work, or you could do it on like really beneficial improvements into your business.
Right.
But it's like really hard to make that mental switch.
Yeah.
From thinking that like everything must be productive in a like right now money making sense is very, very challenging.
Yeah, I think it's the right now versus later. I mean, I built that spreadsheet with Alicia a while ago, and it is so clear. It's like if you're like a rational person and you're thinking about like the next 7 days or the next month or what are our targets this quarter?
Yeah.
No improvement basically is worth doing.
Yeah.
And it's only after like 3 to 6 months where you break even.
Yeah.
On those efforts. So yeah, you have.
Although it is interesting, like we've been doing this podcast for 9 months now.
Yeah.
I feel like we both made a lot of improvements. Like we've both invested a lot of time and money back into the businesses.
Yeah.
And I would say both of us feel much better off for it in that time frame, like significant. So it's I think it's a little of both, like a hard numbers accounting standpoint. Like probably we aren't in the payoff zone. Maybe we are, but probably not. But in terms of like effectiveness and like ability to function as humans in our business.
Yeah, I mean,
that's like definitely paying off.
I would agree. That is purely a financial analysis.
Yeah.
And it's not a complete picture because I think I think it's a pretty common thing for small business owners to feel like every day is just running around with your hair on fire, and then the day ends.
That's a hilarious meme you sent me.
Oh, yeah. For the listener, maybe we'll post a link to it.
Yeah, we should.
But it is someone,
description.
Goes to change a light bulb, and then goes to get a replacement light bulb, and when they go into the closet, the shelf is loose, and then they discover the shelf bracket has a screw loose. So they open the drawer to grab a screwdriver. The drawer squeaks. So they go into the garage to get some oil. The oil's empty, so they hop in their car to head to the store, and their engine sounds a little rough, and then it cuts to his presumably wife walking to the garage being like, hey, did you change that light bulb I asked you to change? And he rolls out from under the car and is like, what does it look like I'm doing? So yeah, I feel like that was very relatable. Still, I mean, I guess still partly because of this mindset of like, don't ignore it, don't put it off, like just fix it. But then, and this harkens back to
days, everything's broken.
Yeah, so you're like, whatever. Yeah, I'll muscle through this task. And instead I'm like, well, instead of just like, I had to rebuild some CAD models to make, because whatever, something wore out. It's not a good design, so we're redoing it, like some of our tooling. And the first one I did, I kind of did this hacky way of doing it where I just like modified the model of the like vice jaw inserts and just made them, like set them back instead of modeling the new ones, which are larger, and putting them in. And so finally yesterday I was like, all right, I'm just going to do this properly, model the large ones. Anyway, one thing after another. And it's like, I could have been done an hour ago, but instead I just invested 2 hours in sort of building out a more theoretically smoother process for making new tooling. I don't know. But this sort of harkens back to a conversation, what was it, last week? Anyway, about like getting to a point of process reliability or process availability or something.
Stability, availability.
Stability, maybe that's the word, where you can start improving. And maybe that's kind of it. So like maybe when you're jumping through, it sort of indicates there's actually a lot of work in that full workflow. Right, where you're like interacting with 5 badly built or badly solved or...
Right. If you're going to look for the oil and then you find yourself fixing your car, like that process needs a lot of work.
Yeah, like the oil should have been Kanban. Like, why did the oil run out?
Just as a metaphor.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good metaphor, actually, now that I'm sort of thinking about it harder. I don't know where the light would come in, but like the shelf bracket, I guess, theoretically should have been found in cleaning, like cleaning for inspection.
Oh, I hadn't even thought about like trying to apply it directly to...
it's sort of a silly exercise.
Well, maybe, but I think it's just like if you engage with a process and you find cascading, breaking operations or aspects of the process, like clearly a lot of work to be done. If you engage with a process and it's like a little tweak, like you're
that's
further down the road.
True. It's a good actually sort of lens to like or thing to have in your head, maybe. Because I'm thinking in my shop, like I'll go to put up a shelf. And then I'm like, oh, I need to screw this in. Okay, I need to go downstairs, get the drill. I know where the screws are, but sometimes the drill has traveled. So maybe we need like a proper home and not just like, it's generally on this shelf. And then like maybe the screw bits or, maybe the screw bit isn't there. Maybe we need a drill upstairs. Like, and it's easy. Right. It's easy to just sort of muscle through and then cascade of like, oh, now I'm searching for the drill. And now in searching for the drill, I come across this other thing that needs cleaning or fixing or I get interrupted by someone saying, hey, I need your help with, can you look at this thing? Or
I think it's also like, it's going to be, it's somewhat inherent in a growth phase of a business.
Okay. That is a big topic.
And it's also inherent when like, during a growth phase, you're doing lots and lots of things that are not your core competency, like putting up shelves, right? Like you're not in the business of putting up shelves. You don't necessarily,
it feels like I am.
You don't necessarily need to like optimize the process for putting up shelves. Like it needs to be doable. But during a growth phase, those types of projects and processes are everywhere. Like we're dealing with this right now with building out a new shop where it's like, in a awful turn of events, my electrician friend ended up in the hospital.
Oh no.
So we are doing our electrical work ourselves. And luckily one of my people is a jack of all trades, but it's also not his or my core competency.
Right.
So like, yeah, we're like, okay, how do electric?
Yeah.
Based on, you know, like we've both wired stuff, but like wiring out a big shop to be done well is like a new challenge. Or painting or whatever, all the stuff we're doing. We're like, oh, yeah, you need a man lift for this. This isn't just like a man lift. Show up with a ladder project.
Yeah, I think I was sort of thinking about it in the context of it seems like taking all that time that is recommended to solve all the problems, like stop what you're doing, never pass on a reject to the next process.
Yeah.
That to me feels, and I've sort of been struggling with this, I don't know how to square that with like growth, as you're saying. Like we want to launch a bunch of new products. Are there going to be issues with those? Yes. Do we have the manpower to simultaneously chase down every single problem that crops up while simultaneously launching new products?
Yeah. No.
Probably no.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how to think about that. I will say lately, I think we've had a lot of big wins on improving process over operations. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes a lot of those issues are cropping up in operations, and it's really tempting to get sucked down into the details. And I just wonder if I need a sort of longer time horizon perspective on like, yeah, this is not ideal.
Yeah.
But let's not get dragged into like designing new soft jaws because we get a 3% reject rate because of a flaw in the soft jaws before we sort of figure out eliminating tumbling as an example, or like I've been talking a big game about getting a robot. This last week I decided I don't need a robot, so we can get into that. But because it just felt like I need to stabilize the painting process before I get a like.
Right.
It just occurred to me I should just get
on a pig kind of at that point.
I should just get a quick connect thing that I'm planning on installing on a robot arm for my current process and manually paint by lifting a rack, sticking it to this spinning thing, painting that with the motions I anticipate using with a robot.
Yeah.
Because I'll learn a ton.
And it'll probably go faster than you do it now.
And it will be faster than I do it now. And if it's not, I should know that, and I should know why.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I've been thinking about growth versus like stop every time there's an issue and fix the problem, because we know in the long run, or it seems in the long run, that approach is the winning approach.
Yeah.
But there's like first mover advantage, which is only an advantage if you move. How do you? I don't know.
Right. There's all of these different forces at play. It seems like I think we all kind of come to this with different natural skill sets, and I think like some people handle prioritization easily and well, like big picture prioritization, and I think it's more difficult for some of us. I'm not saying you. I'm
saying me.
I think I fall into that as well often, but I think like in your scenario, having some sort of a simple rating system seems like it could go a long way, where you could be like, this is priority A right now. Like it just is, because it has to happen. Like we have to get this product out the door for say the holidays. So you can't compromise priority A for something that's a C priority this week. Like that's just I think that would probably be a tremendous help. But again, I don't know how to square that with like Toyota essentially saying like, no, don't brush it under the rug. Yeah. And to be clear, like if you listen to their launch phase story, I forget how long they were working before they rolled out a car. It was years. Their early launch? Like the start of Toyota Automotive. Huh. Like they started in looms. Yeah. So was it just like an offshoot of the loom company for a while? Yeah, I forget the Toyota, the specific name of the guy. How was it funded? Him doing, so he made looms. They were very successful. Okay, so and then his son, I forget, Akio Toyota. Anyway, he sort of was like, hey, it's your turn to figure something out. Why don't we do cars or something like that? Right.
And then he hired 20 people or something, and they worked at it for years, and their investors were kind of like, are you guys gonna, I don't know, release a car? And they're like, wait for it. And then they launched and were successful, but
yeah,
I don't know.
It comes back to that faith.
I guess,
from the quote.
I'm not sure that is the right approach. Like, since then they've gotten very fast at engineering.
Sure.
But
it's also an
that's not the
approach.
Era. It's an approach for the era, especially because it was very clear that cars sold.
Right. Yeah.
They were in the age of cars, and they were like, can we make a better car? In which case, like, being laser focused on making a better car makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
But I think if you're launching sort of stuff into a new market that you don't know if it's going to sell, you still want, like, demonstrate product market fit, etc. Like, I don't know. I don't think it's a wise idea to wait so long to roll something out.
Agreed. Yeah. I think, like, it's easy to, I think you would need to have a priority system where priority B's got to become priority A's. It's like things like move forward in sequence.
Yeah, or maybe if you could visually see how many priority A, B, and C's you had.
Yeah.
If there was a ton of priority B stuff that's accumulating, maybe that indicates that you need to hire or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, these are actually quite, like, priority B is quite important. It's just not, like, the most important.
Yeah.
Like, maybe, maybe priority, like, C and D, or maybe, like, D and E become the things that are like, yeah, that would be cool, but, like, is it essential? No.
Yeah. Like, we made a whip board.
Same. Some updates. ...
Yeah. Basically, we made a whip board, and more or less the things that I put up there for myself have not happened because they're all priority B or C. And every single day I'm like, I could do that, or I could send out this quote I need to send out, which is partially a flaw on my end. Like, right, like the person probably could deal with getting that quote in the morning instead of that afternoon. I mean, maybe. There's people who argue that
within a half an hour is way better.
Yes. Yeah. So there's that. But I think I need some sort of prioritization in our whip board as well. And some way, I think what it kind of comes down to is, like, balancing, like, critical daily operations with these long-term or longer-term pushes or improvements. Wow, we just kind of loop back to, like, fundamentals. What I said just is nothing new in any way whatsoever.
No, I mean, it's
some
really
sort
hard.
of system to do it is what we need.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So my reaction to the whip board, I'm in the same boat, by the way, where, like, the things that end up on the improvement list are sort of like, I don't know, but then, okay, well, I'll finish the thought. You put all these things of improvements that would be great.
Yeah.
And then there's a ton of projects that are sort of, like, fundamental to growing the company and moving forward.
Yeah.
And it seems definitely worth making sure that those get some attention.
Yeah.
And maybe more attention than, like, I need whatever, the hinge, the drawer squeaks. I should oil it. At the same time, I think the whole premise of continuous improvement, not the whole premise, the difficulty is that every single day it doesn't make sense to make the choice to take some time to improve stuff, rather like improve your work rather than doing the work.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of the struggle, is, like, if you accept that to be true, that it does pay to build a company or an organization that does take some time to make sure, like, yes, we all have very important things to do, but if we spend a little bit of time every day improving how we do those things, we will win.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it just comes back to the, like, you actually have to carve out time every day.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes back to. It gets very cloudy when some of those, like, big push items are improvements or are borderline like is a new ERP system an improvement?
Yeah.
But it's also a huge project. Well, yeah.
It is.
Like, I mean, does it fall into the category of like, I'm taking an hour a day to sort of redesign an ERP or to solve?
Sure. Yeah.
It's sort of a core business function, reordering stuff.
Yeah.
It's weird. Yeah. I don't know either.
I kind of feel like we need to have like a couple different, like in a perfect world, I don't know if I actually have the capacity to implement this right now, but you'd have like a whipboard that was categorized and like each day you'd do a different category kind of a thing.
Yeah, it could be.
But that gets hard because some of the things take more time.
So what I did with my whipboard is I had the item that I was theoretically working on.
Yeah. And
then like a week ago, I was just like, okay, I'm working on way more than that one thing. So at least let me make this represent what. So I put all the projects I'm theoretically working on. And I think what it made clear to me is that I need to, like, having a whipboard doesn't mean you follow the whipboard. But I do think it would still be way more efficient for the whole process if I did sort of look at all those projects, boot half of them to like next month.
Yeah.
And like today and tomorrow, I'm just doing item 1.
Yeah.
But then there's that person asking for a quote in your inbox.
Yeah.
Do you get back to them? Do you not get back to them?
Yeah.
Do you hire 5 people? Can you cash flow that? Yeah.
That would be a good quote. Can you cash flow that? Should we jump? Wow, that was a great tangent. Jump into some actual topics we had here.
Yeah. I can get into the robot.
Yeah, let's hear about it.
Yeah, so
I mean, this is our favorite topic.
I thought I needed a robot, and now I think I don't need a robot because, I want a robot eventually, but
sure, you actually have a robot. It just doesn't work.
That's true. It just doesn't work. So I've been thinking a lot about how to, connect a part to the end of the robot and what moves I need to get good paint coverage, not overpaint, not underpaint. I found a few little clips of similar painting lines that I'm imagining. Mm-hmm. One from a factory tour of the Bosch plant where they have a robot spraying parts that are moving by it on a spinning little dowel pin kind of thing.
Yep.
Which is very similar to what I'm thinking. I'm just thinking about putting the dowel pin on the robot and spin the part rather than have it on the line going by. Pros and cons to that.
Yeah.
But I guess what I realized is like the crux of this problem has nothing to do with a robot. I am very confident that I can program a robot to do the series of moves I need to do. To pick up a part from over here, do the things, put it down over here. Right, that is not the question mark at all. The hard part is, what does the thing that is holding the parts look like? Is it universal across all our parts? Do I need the ability to clock it like with bigger parts as you spin things? The outer circumference is traveling faster than the inner circumference. Mm-hmm. And so parts that are larger in one dimension, whatever, like big boxy rectangles instead of like something closer to a cube can become a problem.
Right now, when you paint,
I do not spin.
So you do one side then the other?
I do a series of moves that I've sort of figured out works.
And you can just duplicate that.
Yes. The nice thing about spinning is that you're randomizing like the motions. And if you can get good coverage with randomized motions, it just means you don't need to like orient your parts. You don't need precision across a few different.
But it sounds like there's other issues with the randomized and spinning issue.
There may be. And this is exactly why I do not need a robot. What I need is
an experiment.
And I did this very briefly, but I feel like I should move entirely to the base system, like the racking system I think I want to put on a robot.
Yeah.
Like, are these little pucks that hold a wire that we put our parts on? Is that puck Like, does the robot grab it from the outside? Does it grab it from the inside? As you get paint build up on the outside, the inside is probably better locating features. Are those a series of laser cut discs that are like pop riveted together? Is that a good way of getting like a cheap assembly?
Sure.
Do I get them turned? There's just a ton of question marks that have nothing to do with learning how to program a robot.
Yeah.
But buying a robot seems like pretty cool.
Right. It is funny how we tie these things to like these aspects that we feel like are really key, because like the end state that we envision involves that big investment.
Yeah.
And totally gloss over all of the other work. Like I do this constantly and continuously have to like bring myself back to like, you can figure out this part now. Like
and it's less exciting is the problem, I think. Like
it is.
Like if I had a robot sitting there, I feel like I would put more time into like, okay, I really want to get this thing running. What's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step?
Yeah.
But I can start now and benefit from the learning. And also I think it would be a more efficient process now.
Yeah. It's an interesting mental like hurdle. I've been finding this working on our house.
Yeah.
So I'm doing like all the drain, waste, vent plumbing right now.
Uh-huh.
And I've like done some plumbing in my life. Like I can get the stuff to flow the right way. But this is the first time it's been like a house I'm planning to live in maybe for the rest of my life, and B, going to be inspected. And so I'm like having to do things really, by the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had this interesting thing where most of the whole system is pretty straightforward, like simple. Like I just can figure out how to do it and do it. There's one part where it's like goes through some joists. I'm going to need oversized holes. Like the fitment of it all gets kind of complicated. And I found that like I was unable to kind of start until I got that part figured out. And at some point I was like, just do the rest of it.
Yeah.
Like they're not tied into each other. Like just get that part done. Like the work has to be done today or tomorrow, like, or a week from now. Just like do it, get it out of the way. And in that, you're probably going to learn things that will assist you in figuring out the hard part.
Yeah.
And I feel like we have this attachment to like figuring out the crux or getting to the end state before beginning, when usually there's all of this work that can be done that assists the process.
Yeah.
And you can really kick that, like
the
robot, you can kick it down the road.
Right. Yeah. And like that is not the crux, turns out. It is just the coolest part. And it is such a key part of what I've been envisioning. Like the goal here is automate paint. Right. And so it feels weird to be like, all right, step one, no automation at all.
Uh-huh.
Just a big step toward automation. Because every time I'd play it through in my head, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to get the robot. Well, if I get it, it's just going to sit there because I still need to do X, Y, and Z. So then I'd start sort of thinking about what am I going to do? Anyway, so.
And you may discover you don't even need a robot.
Yeah, right. It's like, oh, actually, this is way simpler motion than I had anticipated.
Like, I wonder if you could do like a track that like rocks and like runs it along something that just spins it as it goes.
I think there's no doubt that I can make a paint machine without a robot. I forget if we talked about this on the podcast. What I came to is that the invested engineering time in building that machine, I'm quite confident it would work for our existing parts, but I'm not confident that as we add product that we won't need more axes of motion
and just variation in process.
And then it's like, now we suddenly need a totally, like, one of the things Toyota emphasizes in automation is flexibility.
Yeah.
And so we'd have a very inflexible automation process.
Yeah.
Or automated process. And so something that made me, like your plumbing example, we've been talking a lot in the shop about is, and Shigeo Shingo has an example of this that I mentioned on the podcast last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago. Building incomplete solutions, and that sometimes we get fixated on like, okay, we need to solve this problem. What is a complete solution, instead of like, we we can get into this. We eliminated our shipping area.
I was very intrigued. Yeah. When I saw that on the spreadsheet.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that. Let's hit one of yours.
Well, actually, what we were just talking about ties right into I've just been thinking again about like in-house versus purchased solutions.
Oh yeah.
Flexibility, cost, all that. And, we both use the gripper system, which, what would that, it's like an 10th the cost of like a off the shelf sort of part loading solution.
Loading like with a robot?
Yeah, like most of the off the shelf, like.
Or what, 70K ish?
More in the 80, I think.
Okay.
80 to 100 range.
Yeah, so this is like $8,000 or something. Yeah,
so it's about a 10th the cost.
And with that would come with like a vise and end effectors and stuff, that $80,000?
I think often. It's been a while since I priced anything out.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's in the order of magnitude sort of realm in terms of like hard costs. Obviously, you have to put a bunch of time in. But then, so this last week, I did this back boring macro routine project, which developed from a part feature. Did we talk about this last week?
Not on the podcast. Okay. I think we were texting about it.
Yeah. A part feature that's sort of like an impossible feature, like a classically impossible feature. It's not impossible, obviously. It is done. But it's a very hard to do feature.
Okay.
And there's like a special tool that you can buy for doing it, which I was like right on the edge of purchasing. And this was kind of the comparison of in-house versus off-the-shelf solutions and flexibility, etc. So the off-the-shelf solution is like $1,800 for this tool with this like spring-loaded cutter that like you put it through a hole and then the cutter flips out so you can like cut backwards on the back side of the hole.
Crazy.
Kind of like if you imagine like, those like retractable knife or the retractable blade arrowheads.
Yeah.
It's kind of, same sort of concept. It like goes through something and opens up. So that was like $1,800, definitely would work. Not very versatile, right? Like it's built for more or less one size hole.
Oh, brutal.
It's, I think you can put different size blades on it, but they're very expensive. Like $500 maybe or something per little blade. And if you crash the thing, you're out. You're like, you're sort of over a barrel. So it was expensive, not versatile, and it was still going to require custom programming.
Okay.
And so I kind of came to this like, well, this is I think a good situation to bring sort of like in-house know-how and a little bit of upfront work to make something more versatile, less expensive, and like easily replaceable.
Yeah. It also seemed like a cool opportunity for like institutional learning, because we've been talking about like passing variables on macro programs and stuff.
Yeah. It was all those things.
Yeah.
And it sort of like fell into that, like the easy solution is just to spend some money right now. But I do feel like in all of the scenarios where we have chosen pretty much, I can't think of any like real downside scenarios so far where we've chosen to sort of develop our own solutions instead of buying an off-the-shelf solution. It's worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
And I think what I was thinking this morning is that I think often the failure of in-house solutions is people would get kind of greedy with how cheap they want to be.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, and it's like, so if you're like, I'm not going to spend $80,000 for a part loading solution, but I'm only willing to spend $500.
Yeah.
It's probably going to fail.
Right.
But if you're like, I'm going to spend a 10th and think about what $8,000 opens up for you, all of a sudden that's like a big chunk of money to play with if you're not just like pouring it down someone else's, into someone else's business, and some time. And I think you often get like pretty robust solutions if you're willing to actually invest a decent portion of what the comparable off-the-shelf solution costs.
Yeah, I have sort of a recurring, it's not really a joke because I don't know if it's funny, but like I've done a lot of stuff on my own. Like I see how other people are doing it. I'm like, and I feel like the journey is often like you look out at what other people, you're like, I'm going to do this thing. And so you look around and you're trying to design it. And then there's one crux of the project that you're just not sure. Like, it just seems like it conflicts, right? It's like, is this going to be strong enough? Or like, how do you deal with these forces or whatever it is? Like, how do you connect this to that? I can only think of like janky ways of doing it.
Yeah.
And so then you're like, you know what? I'm just going to buy the first one. I'll see how they do it. And then you look at it and you're like, oh, they just did the janky thing I was going to do. So the second time you do it yourself. And then the third time you're like, well, that was a lot of effort. I'm just going to buy it. I feel like that's been, I did that with backpacks and for years. But
it's a little different with consumer items.
I was going to say, I think something to think about is like, what are the units that you're sort of calling like subcomponents of the project, right? Like, is a robot, for my solution, I could build the robot. Sure. A robot is built out of servos and gears and pulleys and machine parts. I could also start like hobbing gears and making servos, and servos are made up of like windings and bearings. I could start making windings. I could start refining copper. Like there's some basic unit that you're like, okay, they have a good process for this, and what I'm buying is not much more than what I need. Yeah. I think that's often a big piece, is that like Toyota talks about this, that a big part of building in-house solutions is that you end up with something closer to what you actually need.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like if you're buying a solution versus a component, I mean, this kind of just breaks it down. Like,
but like a solution is also a component. If you zoom out to like your business, it's like a component of your business. Sure. And then if you zoom in, there's like, I don't know. Shigeo Shingo has a graph that sort of talks about, is it a means or is it an ends? And it turns out that every means is an, and like you can just hop up and down the scale of like, you know, a mill is a means to an end, which is a part. But the part is a means to an end, which is like that part goes in a machine, and that machine is a means to an end because solves a problem for a customer, and solving that problem is a means to an end because you want to make money, which is a means to like buying food, which is a means to like staying alive, which is a means for something.
Reproduction.
Hard to say. Similarly, I feel like there's this. Anyway, I don't know if that's helpful in any way.
Well, maybe it's like whatever sort of like lens you're looking at, like if you're looking at the, you know, an operation level or a process level, if you're looking for a solution within that level, if you can sort of solve it with your own solution with components versus in a reasonable manner. Like sometimes it just makes sense like to buy stuff. Like we don't make our own vices.
I was going to say,
we do make our own soft jaws.
Right. And I've been tempted to make my own hardened inserts.
Yeah. And so that's like,
but I don't.
The vice is a component to a solution, which is holding material in a mill.
Right. And it is, it's
and you could buy the full solution, which is the vice and the soft jaws, and maybe even paying someone to program how you cut the soft jaws or something. Yeah. But we choose to do a decent portion of that in-house. And that's like one we take for granted often. But when looking at new processes, I think it's good to use that same lens and say, what if this is actually a complete solution that might not be ideal and might be overpriced? Yeah. Versus just components that are easy for me to put together into a package.
Yeah. And related to your project that you're talking about here, I also think I've noticed for myself that there's like I keep reminding myself the easiest part of a project is buying the stuff. Yeah. Right. So like there you can make substantial tangible progress on backboring those holes you're dealing with by just spending $1,800, and you're like, that's a big step in the right direction. Yeah. There's all this excitement.
And a lot of people
shows up in the mail.
Feel great about that choice, and that is also fair.
Yeah, totally. Like not to say, but like then it's like then it shows up and is sitting there, and then you start having to program it. Instead of sort of upfronting the hard, annoying, not fun part of like, Okay, you could have done all the programming without even having the thing before ordering it to see like, can I get all the moves I need? But somehow that feels like similar with buying the robot. Like, it's just very tempting to go buy the fancy fun thing. Then it shows up and you're like, oh, now I need to do all the work instead of like do all the work and then just plug in this fancy thing.
Yeah.
Or do the work and plug in a less fancy thing. So how did it work out?
I haven't actually cut metal today. That's actually this morning's project.
Oh, very cool.
I posted a thing on Instagram. I just like stuck some paper in a vise to like kind of have a reference point for my eye. It appears to work. Shout out to Dylan who found some issues in the code for me.
Oh, nice.
Like it worked. And then he was like, well, if you change this variable, that other thing's not going to change. And I was like, oh yeah, good catch. Like,
oh, nice.
That's one of the interesting things about macro programming and trying to make everything variable driven. As soon as like when some things are variable driven and some things are not, you get into situations where you'll forget that this part doesn't update properly and all that. But it was pretty cool. So it like for getting into the weed's sake, it passes variables. So my scheme is that I pull the point for the hole in CAD,
like the center point, XY.
Yeah, like the XYZ coordinate. And do an NC pass through, and I can just type in those points in the pass through for the, I guess they're like QUTV or something. I forget which variables off the top of my head.
G code.
Yeah. And so then it's hard coded into the program, so I don't have to go back and like redo it every time we post.
Okay. I see.
And it passes those. So it passes the XYZ and A coordinate, and then it passes the pass height.
Okay.
And the total height of like the helix for the bore. Right now, the like depth that it goes before doing that is like within the subprogram. It is a variable, but it's within the subprogram at the moment. So you have to go in there to alter that.
Gotcha.
But it could make that passable as well.
Right.
So anyway, I think it's a good balance of like, we can easily update this for different size tools, different size counter bores. And then more importantly, this is a feature that's going to be across a whole family of parts.
Gotcha.
And so I wanted to be able to like adjust it, like make it easy to like have it go here on this part, have it go here on this part, have it go this spot on this part. Other than that, they're pretty much all the same feature. So,
interesting.
Yeah, we'll see today how it works. Hopefully I don't blow up any tools. It's a very high risk test.
Because you're
like running it through a hole before you start.
So you can't really see much.
You can't see anything and it's fully captured.
Right.
So if everything goes wrong, it's just going to break.
But it's not it's not $1,800. So.
No, it's like $100 tool instead. Okay. Easily, like probably can get another one overnight. So
do people... I'm sure this exists. Are there test materials people use that won't really break tools and are like for validation? That feels kind of worthwhile. Like,
yeah, maybe like foam or something.
Yeah, like Wren shape comes to mind. It's like a machinable foam people used in industrial design a lot.
That's a good thought.
I don't know. Then you'd have it sitting around. Aluminum's kind of cheap, but it would be kind of nice because I feel like you could just run fast and see that all the moves work well.
I think in some situations that would work out or be helpful. I think if you're trying to validate like a big production process at this point, it's like the extra time would probably be more than the time of more than the cost of the tool. And
then if you start validating like, can I cut foam well instead of, do you know what I mean? Like if it doesn't cut similarly to aluminum, then if it was like anyway,
might almost be worth like cross-sectioning the part.
Right. Yeah, so you could put like half a block with a hole drilled in it.
Yeah.
In a vise and then back out so you can see it. I feel like you won't. I'm not sure I would.
I'm not going to do all that. I'm just going to send it.
Do it and
on single block, but yeah.
Yeah, totally. It's funny. I don't know. So we have been continuing some build out stuff on the shop. Which we'll get into next episode, moving how you get into the shop, adding a door, this and that. that door is right behind where our shipping station was.
Oh, yeah.
So Sam built a new table, moved all the shipping station stuff onto it, and it was quite large. And we were sort of talking about what was driving the size. And he was like, well, I basically modeled the old table.
Uh-huh.
And we were kind of talking about like how much of that was necessary, this and that. And then I was like, could we just eliminate the shipping table? Mostly as just a thought experiment.
Uh-huh.
And we started talking about it. And we ended up just moving it all onto the assembly area. And we will still have sort of a shipping area.
Yeah, I was like, how do you not have a shipping somewhere?
It's not dedicated. What we realized is 98% of our work is on orders that work on one workflow kind of, where they're going into like a padded envelope.
Yeah.
And so for all of that, we just have all the padded envelopes. We added a little table to the side of the sewing machine to hold the padded envelopes and some packaging materials. We put the printer, we had a computer at the shipping area already, so we put the printer there. And so now you just, interestingly, we went to single piece flow instead of batching. Yeah. And so this immediate result was we had these two chutes that fed empty bins to the assembly area and then orders in bins back to the shipping area. That took up 18 inches between, so we eliminated that. And then we for a while have been meaning to order more bins because we kept running out of bins. Now we don't need any bins, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah. So you literally just sew it into a bag into the envelope.
Yeah. So it's like, we talked a while ago about, I forget which machine shop the guy was talking. I think he was running ERP software now, but he was talking about block to box or something at each station.
Oh, yeah.
Bar
to box.
Bar to box. So this feels like closer to that. And so we are doing single piece flow. We have less whip. We immediately eliminated 18 inches of movement every time from the assembly area to the sewing machine because it was wedged in between the two. And you somehow become sort of blind to that.
Yeah.
So we're like, wait, we don't need that. We took it out. We scooted the sewing machine over 18 inches. We added an 18-inch table next to the sewing machine where that holds the envelopes. That table is probably mostly going to go away over time. We just didn't want to spend a ton of time consolidating everything and building more
stuff.
So
what do you do for the edge case of a big batch shipment?
I think it's just going to be semi non-ideal for now of working on a sort of flex area, but we have already, it so doesn't fit into our workflow. It doesn't fit into our bins. So already it was an edge case that we dealt with separately. So now it'll be maybe slightly less convenient because you have to walk back over to the assembly area to get the labels. Yeah. But I think all those problems are very solvable. And for most of our work, going from going to an envelope that is ready to ship with every single order that's assembled, just makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
And it was funny to see the rule of thumb kind of applied of, we eliminated a lot, when things are moved to single piece flow, you often end up with a 40% reduction in needed shop space.
Yeah.
And we probably eliminated more than that of we eliminated almost a whole department, if you will, if you can call a table a department.
And it seems like a potentially easy solution would just be a fold up. You could have a pre-populated shipping area for large orders.
Yeah.
That was just on hinges or something, so it folded out of the way, but had everything you needed on it.
So already we separate those out for production leveling and not to mess up the whole Kanban setup. We basically break out big orders into blocks of 10 straps and mix those into our production. So every day you can kind of add whatever our levels are that we've decided upon and then mix them in. And then those just get diverted onto a shelf where you're sort of queuing up to ship that big order. So I think it'll be sort of similar, but back to that concept of solving 85% of a problem, or in this case, it's more 95 or it's most of our days are that. And so it was kind of fun to see for a number of reasons. I felt just setting a challenging goal of can we eliminate this whole area instead of like, can we marginally improve it?
Yeah.
Led to some really interesting insights about like, what do we actually use every day? What is there a reason we need to, and it eliminates a huge amount of wasted motion because we're walking between the two areas, because every time, like, to keep our batch sizes small, and this is like classic lean, to keep our batch sizes small, we would walk back and forth. So every time we filled up, 10 order bins, we'd go over to the shipping station, ship them, then go back and start making more.
Yeah.
And that's partly because not every step in our process is manned, right? But the second we decreased the need to travel, you suddenly can do single piece flow. So like instead of spending money on improving transportation operations, we improved the transportation process by eliminating it. Anyway, it was very exciting. It's, I think, going to lead to a lot more. Oh, this is another classic lean thing. The second you go to single piece flow, it highlights all the inefficiencies that you were sort of hiding by batching.
Yeah.
So now, actually, I asked Sam, like, hey, how's it going after using it for 2 days? And he's like, well, I don't know if it's okay, but I've eliminated writing a thank you note to each person on their order slip. And I was like, well, why? And it was basically just annoying to have to walk back and forth between these two spots. Whatever. The specifics aren't super critical. And I was like, okay, so we need like a space to write on. And then the thing we were writing on had like a bump in one area, which caused a defect, which is like the most ridiculous. Anyway, so fixed that. Sort of came up with a better workflow. I think for now we are going to sort of make a concession and just batch the writing of the thank you notes. But like that's 100% a solvable problem. Yeah. But has sort of been raised into our like awareness by the fact that it was made annoying by the fact that we're trying to like single piece flow.
Yeah.
And so instead of just like dealing with it because you're doing a whole bunch, and so you can sort of like,
sure,
oh, right, there is a bump in this one corner of the thing I'm writing on, but I remember that now. And so for the next 20, I'm good. Sure. I'm going to avoid it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, it's just classic water level thing where it's like all of a sudden the rest of the process is so easy that this one thing that's a little annoying stands out.
It stands out, and then also I think there's a challenge of task switching all the time.
Yeah. Which
makes any difficulty like really hard to hold in your head, because instead of just holding it in that one thing in your head while you do that process 10 times, you need to hold it in your head, do one, hold this next thing in your head. I don't know if holding in your head is specific enough. Like, again, it sounds stupid, but like having that bump on the thing where you're writing the thank you note, and if you hit it with your pen, you create a defect.
Yeah.
If you're doing 20 of them, it's fine, but you do one, you forget it's there, you create a defect, you have to go back.
Yeah.
And so if that isn't easy, and it's not easy to do the next, like, it just makes everything more annoying, which I think makes people not do single piece flow.
Yeah. Are you going to have it like print straight onto a board and then just like have a pen hanging there and you can just like write on it before you even pull it off the printer?
I don't know. We might. So the current idea is to maybe.
Also, have you thought about a stamp?
So the thought is to maybe do a stamp, and then just sign our name to still have that like handwritten, like, we see you.
Sure. But you can also get a stamp of a handwritten thing that looks very real.
Yeah, could do. We'll see. I mean, could
it is nice to have it be genuine.
Yeah, we could also we were also thinking of pre-populating a note that was sort of like, thanks for the order, and then just hand signing it to eliminate that 80% of that task is writing, hey, thanks for the order, and then signing it. You could just say, like, sign it.
Yeah.
There is a question of like, how much, like, this is sort of rationalize your production. How much time are we spending making this? And so what is our time budget for making a person feel appreciated? Or I don't know what we're creating in the user experience, but so we were sort of talking about like, we're writing this handwritten note. It is a means to an end. What is the end goal? I don't know exactly. It's creating a feeling for the customer.
Yeah.
How else can we create a feeling for the customer?
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway.
Right on.
We're probably, I don't know how we're doing on time here.
We are definitely over time.
Oh my.
By a significant margin. Got a chewy one this week, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, you have a lot in here. You want to hit some of these?
Yeah, maybe just for fun's sake. We had like a spectacular gripper failure. This last week. I put it in here to just kind of like loop back to the constant drumbeat of the issues with automation are not the issues that you anticipate. And so this one was uniquely, in hindsight, like foreseeable.
Hindsight being what it is.
Yeah. So we have this system with these little trays that we 3D print. They are just held in place they just slip over dowel pins.
Okay.
And gravity holds them in place.
I see what's happening.
Yeah, you can see where this is going. So we ran this. It's this repeat part. We run them about once a month, maybe every 6 weeks. The first time we ran them, everything was just dandy, perfect. I'm not exactly sure what changed. It's either that the plastic swelled from like moisture, or this run of parts was slightly larger, but they were tight in the little trays. And so what was happening, you can see where this is going, is the gripper would go to pick up the part and the whole tray would come with it. And then it would try and put the whole tray in the vise. And then the tool would come in and demolish the tray and all the parts that were in it.
Did you at least find it quickly, or did you run a few like that?
I think it happened once, and we sort of like knew that it might be a thing.
Okay.
Like we were like, these are tight. This might be a problem.
Yeah.
But we didn't quite anticipate the level of the problem. I was thinking it would like slip on parts or, yeah. So I think one got roached before they came and showed me. They came and talked to me on the second one. So we were kind of like, how do we deal with this?
Enlarge the trays, or
we added screw holes.
Yeah.
And screw them down.
That seems pretty decent.
Yeah. It's very straightforward.
Interesting.
And we were able to like do most of the work in place in the machine.
Nice.
I don't anticipate this being a problem loading like square blanks, because you're usually very tight or very loose in the little trays.
Yeah, you would think. Mine,
yeah.
Like every now and then there's a block that stays in the tray, so like I think it's from chip buildup around it.
Yeah.
And then it just jams and then sometimes you try to lift it with your fingers and it pops right out. So you're kind of like, I don't know what the conditions were.
Yeah. In any case, it was a relatively straightforward fix. And actually in the next episode, most of all of the improvements for this last week stemmed from this failure condition.
Interesting.
But anyway, just another, like, you just don't know how things are going to break, and they're not the way you expect them to.
I think the gripper is such a good example of what we were talking about earlier with sort of off the shelf versus doing it yourself.
Yeah.
I feel like I have, and I feel like both of us have learned so much about automation, and like I have a comfort with automation and a comfort with like I feel like I can wrap my head around what that will be like.
Yeah.
To do a robot or just to automate other processes.
Yeah.
It was, I think because it was so approachable and so like limited in scope, also capability, but it's been such a win on a learning front and on a production front. I think probably for me, it sort of is a better fit across more parts.
Yeah.
Than for you, but it seems like for you, like I think it's notable that we've both invested in that and then have been running that for probably near a year and a half or so.
I think so, yeah.
And neither of us have immediately gone and bought a robot for two reasons. I mean, there's a cost reason.
Yeah.
But then there's like an integration question, and like there's still a lot of problems to be solved for the gripper.
Yeah.
that would also need to be solved for the robot. There's also unique problems. And then...
Yeah, the institutional...
And it is capable.
Yeah, it is capable. And the institutional knowledge thing is huge. Like, that was, like, getting the gripper up and running and then figuring out how to optimize it was my, like... Not that I'm any kind of an expert, but that was, like, my macro programming education.
Yeah.
That 100% made it so I could do this other project that I did this last week that would not have been a thing. I would have been over a barrel to buy that expensive tool that was maybe not an ideal fit.
Right.
Or be trying to learn to do macro programming from scratch with a little bit more of an advanced, use case.
Yeah.
So I think that is huge. It's like you're learning knowledge across for automation. You're learning knowledge for programming. It's just like that was why we started 3D printing in large part. Like the amount of knowledge it gained within the organization is huge.
Yeah, and you end up with solutions that are more tailored to your needs, which is interesting because even I feel like after doing it, looking at off-the-shelf automation, I sort of have more opinions about it.
Yeah.
I'm like, that wouldn't really do what we want in a funny way.
Yeah. Yeah, and we don't use it every day, but we just ran like 500 of these little parts that man, if someone had this stand there, it probably would have taken days and days just because of all the little delays.
Yeah.
Even with a dedicated person, no shade on any one person's ability, but it's... Yeah,
it is. I have to say, and I know I have a very easy part, but it is mind-blowing to me how much of machining happens with, that part loading is not more prevalent, and I understand why.
Yeah,
but it's just mind-blowing to me from a I don't know if wasted human potential is an overstatement here. But it's just, it's crazy if you look around at the world, get on an aircraft and look at all the machine parts. And then it's wow, most of these are hand loaded. It's just crazy. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people in the industry saying that within 10 years, there's not going to be much hand loaded work.
That'll be a huge win for everyone.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I do not.
We'll see if that comes to pass, but... That's certainly the push right now, it appears, in the industry.
It is so worthwhile.
Yeah.
Robots are not that expensive. There are a lot of puzzles to be puzzled.
Yeah, but that's what we enjoy.
It's awesome. Okay, I have some brief things that I'll squeeze in here.
Okay.
Or we could kick them to next week. I've been talking to some other companies, and I think... And then also in our shop, I think one thing that people miss is, and it was a big, aha moment for me, was realizing that there's sort of, a few things moving around a shop. I think the ones people pay attention to are people and materials.
Yeah.
I think the hidden one is information, how information flows physically around a shop. How far is it traveling? When does it travel? When does it move?
Yeah.
Where is it building up? Where is it flowing well?
Yeah.
Where is too much being sent ahead of time? All these things, I think are... Anyway, I think looking at your information flow is really worthwhile.
Yeah.
I have a stupid example of this, but we redid a deck over the weekend, a porch, wooden deck, and the sawing station. This was an interesting puzzle. The sawing station was right next to the wood pile that was delivered by the truck.
Yeah,
which makes sense because it's pull it from the wood pile,
sure,
cut it. But then
let's see where this is going.
A lot of measurements had to flow from the actual install of how long do we need the board back to the saw. So what we ended up doing was bringing the saw right next to the deck. Doing a pull system to so there was one of each length board. We had 14, 16, and 20 foot boards available. So we just kept one next to the saw so the saw operator could pull whatever they needed.
Yeah.
And then someone would replenish that, and it just resulted in much more efficient.
Yeah.
And I suspect lower reject rate because we could talk.
Yeah.
And be like, can you give me this? Slightly, whatever, 124 and 3/8, but maybe a little light, like that. So that was sort of thinking about the information flow and keeping that loop as short as possible.
Yeah, I think it's very key.
Was insightful.
Yeah. Nice. Well, yeah, let's kick the rest to next week.
Yeah.
Thank you all for listening. This is a long one. I guess we were excited.
I guess something.
Too much coffee this morning. Not really. I had tea.
Same. Yes, we have a Patreon, and thank you to Thomas Nielsen, new Patreon member.
Hey.
Thanks for the support. The link to our Patreon is in the description. If you get value out of this podcast and want to support it, please head over there and become a member.
Indeed. You can find me at lichen_MFG on Instagram, lichenprecision.com on the web.
And you can find me at austere_manufacturing on Instagram and austeremfg on the internet, and the podcast at incremental CI on Instagram. And we'll talk to you later.
Adios.